First of all, thank you all very much for coming. The purpose of today and subsequent meetings is to just kind of better inform you of what we do in Cleveland City Council, and kind of give a different and maybe a more complete perspective of what we do. A lot of times what is covered are things that happen that somebody might say on the council floor on a Monday night. But I would just remind you that by then the votes have already been taken. And those whatever you would call them, don't necessarily change a vote or what we do. So I think it's important that I provide as much access as possible. I have nothing to hide. I'm very proud of the work that we do here, and there's no topic that I won't talk about. For those of you that know me, there'll be times I'll ask to go off the record just for background. Today's all on the record, by the way, and just so I can give you more information and give you a little bit of perspective of what's happening. Or if there's something that it's a confidence, I may say I just can't comment if it's a confidence that somebody gave me certain information. But I want to basically just kind of let you know that there's not a topic that I won't talk about, and I prefer that you talk to me if you're going to write about something affecting Cleveland City Council. I've got some agenda items, some things I want to hit, but I also want to leave as much time open for your questions. My agenda, I've spent some time preparing, just reviewing like the budget that we're going to vote on tonight, some other things we're doing with our limited our language access plan for persons with limited English proficiency. I know some of you are very interested in the Q deal that's up and coming. So I, spent some time, but I got to say, it's just kind of hard when we had the weekend that we did. It kind of puts in perspective what's really important in terms of what we as a city do when you've got kids dying and shooting each other, and at the rate that we experienced this weekend, it really just kind of puts perspective into whether when we look at with the budget, like what are we budgeting money for, and with this violence that took place over the weekend and continues to happen, we've got to come up with a way to deal with this. And I don't believe that it's just putting more police officers out. I think that there's that people feel that that shooting a gun at somebody there's somehow some lack of any kind of like thought process of how the significance of that. I don't know what the answer is, but it's something that is something that we as a city really need to find an answer to, because it's such a pervasive crisis that we're having. So that kind of through how I was preparing when all this information started coming forward over the weekend. But I do want to, and I'd be happy to talk about anything related to that, but I do want to spend some time talking about our budget first. And let me say that, like many of you, I have been here for relatively good economies in 2006 and 2007. I've been here through the recession of 2008 and 2009. And I have experienced what happens when layoffs occur, and I've experienced what happens when you have to cut services, and when council members give a portion of their salary back to the general fund. We've gone through significant periods of sacrifice here, and the neighborhood that I just in terms of what it's like to be an elected official through that. The neighborhood I live in, there's a lot of city workers, and it's no fun when your kid's friend's dad is like, what number are they for the firefighter layoffs? When I'm coming back? It's like, these are hard things. I mean, this is food on people's table. So we've been through that, and just as we're recovering, we had the KSIC budget that we had to deal with, the local government fund being slashed by $40 million and well over $150 million to date, and tried to provide services throughout that. And that was challenging. Now, where we are today And because the people of the city of Cleveland passed issue 32, the budget that is going to be voted on tonight is the best budget that I have been a part of since I've been a member of Cleveland City Council. And I'm pleased to say that it doesn't just get us even. It makes it so that we can provide services better than we were doing. We can be a better steward of public funds. We can provide services to people in a better manner than we had previously. And just, you know, looking at some of the things that are important to people, and some of the things that we've heard throughout the years. You know, I've never been a part of a budget where $8.3 million, an additional $8.3 million is going to the Division of Police. You know, an additional, you know, I've lived through fire companies, like the decrease in fire companies. Well, this is the first time I've had a budget where there's an increase in a fire company. Anybody who has had the misfortune of having witnessed an accident or seen a car accident, you'll notice that the firefighters are normally the first responders that are there, and EMS usually comes second. And that's because EMS doesn't have the ambulance and they're very understaffed. Well, this budget adds another $5.9 million, because it's great that when the firefighters respond, but they can't transport an injured person to a hospital. So it's very that's very significant that EMS is going to have this $5.9 million. And it's the safety force are the things that we all know about and we can sense, but the neighborhood investment is tremendous as well. That recreation is going to see a bump of $2.3 million. That parks are going to have an increase, park maintenance, an increase of $1 million. We cut, in the bad times, we cut street sweeping, we cut leaf pickup, and that's coming back. We've cut tree trimming for budgetary reasons, and the fact that this emerald ash borer, all of our resources have been going to that for a long time. Well, that's coming back this year. And, you know, if you think about, other than what I mentioned when I first started in terms of the violence, look at our Department of Health, and there's things that rightfully outrage all of us. If you look at lead poisoning, for example, you know, this is something, if you look at, you know, lead poisoning, infant mortality, and the opiate crisis, in addition to what I mentioned when we started, you know, these are the things that keep me up at night, and these are the things that we have to do better at. And for lead poisoning, you know, we're going to take this on. I mean, in the Department of Building and Housing, we're going to have a new chief building inspector, an environmental compliance specialist. We're going to have 5 new building inspectors and 6 residential building inspectors that are all going to be trained in lead. And that's to complement the 3 lead inspectors and be part of the Department of Health. And it's all going to be done in a way that that better coordinates our rental inspection. It creates a rental inspection unit for our rental properties, so that, you know, a slum landlord that thinks it's okay to lease a house to a family that's got a child under 6 and it's lead poisoned, well, it's not okay. And, you know, we're going to be out and we're going to be inspecting those, and they're not going to be able to rent them until they are safe. That's tremendously important to me and to the council. With infant mortality, this is something that, again, we should all be rightfully enraged about, and we should. This is something that we should all be focused on every day. I think through the creation of First Year Cleveland, that our council was very involved in, with the continued services that Moms First provides, I think 2017 is going to be a year of impact. We have, if you looked at the latest numbers, while there's a slight decrease in the state of Ohio, in the actual number, the rate, we still have disparity. You know, black babies are still dying at a disproportionately higher number than white babies, like in a shameful number, not just like by a little bit, not by, you know, 0.02%, by double, triple. I mean, this is a big deal, especially in Cuyahoga County. So that is something that this council and the city's worked hard on, and we're going to continue to drive that home. Opiate addiction. We have not been able to get our arms around this. And we're going to continue to work with our partners to do so. When we started this initiative, kind of a public service initiative in 2014, I was sure that 200 deaths a year was the max. Like we couldn't get any higher than that. And now that we're getting on 600, this is something that that should shock us as a community. And to that, we've partnered with the Adams Board and Cuyahoga County, to provide additional residential treatment beds. And we need to just be aware that even with this isn't going to solve the problem because this disease is so gripping and it's so deadly. But it's something that the council and the city are going to continue to push on. It's one of our main priorities in 2017, and the budget reflects that. And again, we don't have time to go line by line and item by item of what's in the budget, but I just kind of want to give you kind of some of the highlights, and I want to just in terms of, I know people there'll maybe those that suggest that we should be doing more in certain areas, but let me just tell you a little bit about the reconciliation process that happened after hearings and until that happened. We, through the council working with the mayor's office, we were able to find in the budget an additional $5 million for demolition. That is not insignificant. That is actually a giant step forward in terms of eliminating blight in the neighborhoods. And we have an additional $1 million for renovation of existing homes. Now, as happy as I am that we are able to provide those funds for demolition, I don't mind telling you, I'm not thrilled. I mean, I'm less than thrilled about the fact that we're spending money out of our general fund to clean up somebody else's mess. The city of Cleveland shouldn't be in the property management business. We shouldn't be in the business of taking down this number of homes. This problem was left to us by other people who are no longer sharing the burden of this expense. But the bottom line is we have to eliminate blight in the neighborhoods, and as happens so many times, the burden falls to local government, because that's what do you do when you don't know where else to go? You call the city, and this has become our burden to solve. But in addition to that, we're able to secure dollars for council people because everybody's got a local perspective. But in terms of if there's a project in a park, we were able to secure $75,000 per ward, so that if there is a capital item that needs repair or needs to happen, and you can't wait for like the longer term master plan or the capital budget to come through, that'll be accessible to you. If you've got a baseball diamond where the dugout, the fences need to be fixed, if you need to have a field regraded, if you need to have your swimming pool pumped, spoilers, these are things that can happen right away now. And we think that all these things together will really equate to better services and a better experience for people living in the city of Cleveland. And in addition, as we began talking about violence and what's happening, we added a youth employment component to Department of Community Relations. And we're not sure exactly what it's going to look like, but we are coming up with criteria that is a good amount of money to begin that process and get the process going. To the extent that it's suggested that we can just give X amount of money to an agency, I'll just tell you it's not that simple. If you're dealing with YOU or another employment agency, you have to provide like the job site and supervision. Like it's not you can't just say here's a slug of money and make work for some kids. So, but I assure you, it is something that we believe is very important to the whole equation of youth violence, and we're going to put the dollars to that so that we have a comprehensive approach to solving this the violence issue. I know the mayor covered, and I know during the hearings you covered the new initiative that he has with Dwayne Deskins and the enforcement, the prevention, and the health components and how they come together. And and that's going to be a big step forward this year, and this will be a part of that. So I think that in terms of reconciliation, for those of you that have, followed this for a while, there really hasn't been a year when we've come back with almost $8 million more for services than the budget, contemplated. And I'll say that this isn't a budget where the mayor came and said, here it is, what do you think? This is something that we've been working on, throughout the year. Some of the chairmen have sent out surveys asking people what their priorities are. So it's not as if this was just something that was dropped upon us. We've been, very involved in crafting this and the reconciliation part. So I'm very pleased with how this came out. I think that this is going to be a year, and then going forward, that we can really provide services to our residents in a better manner, a more efficient manner, and more of them. So I'm really looking forward to, the hiring process takes some time to staff up to the levels that we need. It's, I don't know if you're aware of the civil service process and everything that we need to go through. I mean, it's not horrible, but it does take a little bit of time. I believe that we have we've contemplated as many police hirings as is possible with the hiring, the cadet training, everything we have to go through for 2017, and that includes the hiring of laterals. So that's, I believe we've done what we can with that. Not that we can't improve safety in other ways, but in terms of just like the raw hiring, I think we've really been as aggressive as we can be this year. So yeah, there's a lot of components, and like I say, I'm happy to take any of your questions on any budget item. But just want to kind of let you know that, in addition to the budget and what we do, council's always doing a lot of other kind of initiatives to better the city of Cleveland. As many of you were at the press conference that over at the convention center about kind of being a welcoming city and everything. We've really made a point of crafting a language access plan. We're fortunate enough to have a fellow from that the Cleveland Foundation funds. That's folks, and she's here with us today. Olivia Ortega is with us. But if you go to our website now and you see what is on there now, when you see the different languages that are there, if you look at this board here, this is going to be at our for anybody that interfaces with the public. If there's a language issue, you look here, you find your language, and you point to it. And then we have an interpretive service that's set up, and we can put somebody on the line so that anybody who is receiving services through the city of Cleveland, language is not going to be a barrier to that. And we're going to continue to work on our signage. We're going to continue to work on our everything we do to make sure that the city is welcoming to people where English might not be their first language. I have copies, if you're interested, of our language plan, and it's also online, and I can give you that link. But I think I've got a stack of copies for anybody who may be interested. Here's this one, and then and we can even make more before people go. So hang on, I'll pass around. So that's just something that might not be on the might not be newsworthy every day or something that you want to cover every day. But I just kind of want to give the sense that along with this and formation of First Year Cleveland and a host of other things, there's a lot of news that might just happen kind of under the radar, or just people just doing their jobs and working hard in their neighborhoods and getting projects completed and just focusing. The Quicken Loans Arena deal is, I know it's a topic of significant interest to many people. That will be first heard tomorrow in Councilman Brancatelli's committee, which is Development Planning Sustainability. The goal is to provide as much information, as much transparency as is possible. We're going to post all of our information on our website. The way it's contemplated is that tomorrow will be mostly presentation of information, then we're going to schedule a follow-up meeting on the following Tuesday for people that want to provide testimony. And then...
That's also development?
Yes. And then after that, then it'll go to finance, and it will have a thorough, briefing. All issues will be discussed as it relates to the Q deal. And again, this is a lot of times issues they're framed in a certain way before all the facts are made available. I really want to have I think this is something where we should all have a good, open, civic conversation about what is the deal and what does it mean to the city of Cleveland? What does this building provide to the residents of the city of Cleveland? And is by taking the action that's contemplated, will Cleveland be better or will it be worse for taking the effort taking the action that is contemplated in the legislation? And I can, because of the position I'm in, I do have access to information, and I could bore you with my thoughts on it, but I'll just kind of hang back and wait for your questions on that. And again, I'd like to make myself available before every council meeting, 6 o'clock. There's a lot of good things coming. I'm very, very much looking forward to once we finalize the residential street resurfacing project and the amount of infrastructure dollars. That might sound incredibly boring, but it was a long slog to get to where we're going to be, and it's going to be the most money we've spent per year in 2017. It's going to be a lot. It's going to be it's going to be $12 million, up from $4 million a few years ago, if you remember. So, so I've talked too much, but that's kind of an overview. But again, any questions are fair game.
Well, before we dive into Q stuff, which
Sure.
I'm curious about, first of all, I think this meeting is a good thing. I think the weekly meetings are important and a mark of good governance. I'm wondering if there's a specific impetus or why right now you decided to make yourself available in this way.
Well, okay, so over the years, I guess I've always been just kind of focused on, getting the result, passing legislation, and doing things, and I haven't paid as much attention to, how the council's perceived, and I think that, some people say that they don't read the paper or watch the news. I read everything and I watch everything pretty much, and I know what gets covered and how it gets covered, and sometimes I think that we're missing. I think that the coverage of council misses the hard work, the good work that we're doing, and like I say, I'm very proud of that, and I'm going to just kind of take, and every now and then you read something about you that you didn't say or do or isn't true, and you're like, okay, why didn't someone just call me? If they just called, there was something in I don't want to name names or throw anybody on the bus, but it's like, I called you, and I'm like, just call me. Like, you got my cell phone. I'm happy to talk. And it was just kind of in that spirit that, look, there's nothing here that isn't the public's information, and I don't have any secrets that I'm not, I'll tell anybody anything that we do, because I think that the processes that we follow, I think that the work that we've done, I think managing, this city through the recession to get to the place that we are now, it was not, those were hard times. There were difficult decisions that had to be made. And, I think I just really want to make sure that, if we disagree on something, let's disagree for the right reasons. Let's make sure that, the conversations have been had, all the information has been vetted, and reach a conclusion that way. I don't want people to reach conclusions because, I didn't properly respond or, get information to people that might be writing it or reporting it.
Let me ask a question really quickly.
Sure.
I'm Afi from Idea Stream. I want to go back to the opioid crisis because
Yes.
you talked about that. And recently the medical examiner's office raised an alarm about the opioid crisis spreading into the Black community.
Mm-hmm.
How does that impact your efforts now? Because they're looking at 150 deaths among African
Yeah.
Americans.
Yeah, well, the tragedy, I mean, if you look at, that is a tragedy in of itself, but if you look at how we got there, it's because the dealers are finding a way to, to sell to the African American community. They've started cutting it with cocaine and other drugs that they think will be more marketable in the African American community, which is, they're looking for new markets to sell their death, their poison. How it affects us, I don't know that it's going to change how we do things in terms of the agreement that we are entering into with the county and with the Adams Board, but with the, Cleveland is, has a, majority of African American residents, so we certainly assume, we now fear that this is going to, kind of it will affect even more of our residents. It will really, have a, more poison to more of our residents, and more of our residents are going to die and get trapped in this mess.
Do you anticipate that the funding that you've set aside to deal with the crisis might be inadequate now?
Oh, I'm sure it will be, and I say that, I don't know what the right number is, but I'm a former chemical dependency counselor. My license has since lapsed, and I'm a former social worker, and I just know that with opioid addiction, treatment is very challenging. And even if you get to residential treatment, that's not a magic bullet. Most people that enter treatment will relapse. And most people that enter treatment will relapse more than once. So is this an adequate number? No. But I don't know if there is an adequate number. I don't know if the solution is us, City of Cleveland, and government agencies spending more money, or it's, the medical community not prescribing opioids, not, prescription drugs, the proliferation of opiate drugs that are coming from the medical community. I think that's where the problem started. I think that's where it's solved, not Cleveland spending more money. So is it adequate? No. Would I like to do more? Absolutely. But we can't simplify this problem by saying that it's a matter of how much money are you going to spend on this.
You said you found in the budget $8 million. Was that money the council added to the mayor's budget?
Yeah.
How did you find the money?
Well, it was,
Where did the money
okay,
come
so
from?
basically what it is, so we have a CPA that we consult with in terms of what should a municipal budget look like, and what should a government budget look like. We are at, in terms of like reserve fund and stuff, we're still under what is kind of a good practice of a reserve fund of 5 to 10%. However, we reasonably believe that there'll be reimbursement from RNC. So basically what we're doing is we're taking a good chunk of this, mostly the demo money, and we're taking it out now with the hope that we're going to be reimbursed for that. So we're kind of taking it, take this money now with the intention it'll be reimbursed, and then with the then that'll still leave us below where we should be for a reserve fund, but not terribly below. And then the additional funds are just things that we needed to, in terms of the dollars for parks or capital projects, the renovations in certain neighborhoods. We just kind of believe that, this is the year that, we have to show residents an impact. This is the year we have to start, making people feel that this tax increase is helping them, that their quality of life is better. And we thought by eliminating blight, by providing dollars to renovate homes, and that can be saved, and by allowing council people to access money for capital projects in their neighborhoods, that would have that effect. But to answer your question, the large sum of it is coming from that understanding that we believe that we're going to get a reimbursement for RNC.
Why?
Excuse me?
Reimbursed from whom?
From the Homeland Security,
Oh, okay.
for our outlay for security for RNC.
One thing that's been getting some coverage recently is what some council people have described to me as tension between the mayor's office and city council. Do you agree that it's sort of tense between the mayor's office, and what can you do to kind of improve those relations?
It's tense between some council members, but overall it's not. overall, it's, the administrative branch of government has a job to do, and the legislative branch of government has a job to do. And, there are those that, would be better theater if we'd fight more. But for the most part, I talk to the mayor, 2-3 times a week. I see him a lot. We talk about stuff, and I don't believe. I would say that there isn't a tension between the council and the mayor's office, maybe certain members, but overall, I think that we get things done.
Yeah. Nonetheless, some of them are hearing about things, in the newspaper, in the media, and I think that bothers them. Is there anything that can be done communications-wise?
Yeah, that is true. Okay, so there are certain council members. No council person likes to learn about something in the paper. Right. That's like just something you don't want to have happen. And there was a couple things that caught people off guard. The public square thing, to a lesser extent, the Q deal. But yeah, every council person wants to know kind of what's happening, and that's why for the Q transformation, I've tried to everybody wants information. It's like, and I intentionally didn't. I knew kind of what was happening, but I didn't go to the press conference because I didn't want it to be any preconceived notion that I was ordaining this before we went through the process that we did. But I've been providing anybody who asked information on what I knew about the deal, and I've been trying to, disseminate as much as I know. But yeah, there is that. But to the extent that it's something that we need to work on, as opposed to it's a deep wound.
I'd like to ask about the Q deal and the money
Sure.
on the admissions tax.
Sure.
It's my understanding, and I'm a spot news reporter, so they
Yep.
throw me in 20 minutes
Absolutely.
before, that it's coming from your admissions tax, and it's predicated therefore on a certain level of ticket sales. What happens if, for example, your projections aren't accurate and you get less? How will this impact?
Absolutely. Thank you. And this will be, we're going to really beat this up good tomorrow. But the answer to your question is the agreement is basically to extend what we're doing, to extend the lease and extend what we're doing through 2034. And of that, when there's admission tax, it's 8%. If it's a Cavs event, 5/8 goes to debt, 3/8 goes to our general fund. If it's a non-Cavs event, if it's Ed Sheeran, if it's Lady Gaga, 6/8 goes to our general fund, and 2/8 goes to debt. So those events we do really good by. And that goes for the secondary market in tickets. And if projections aren't met, nothing changes for us. This is basically, it's that structure is all that's all the legislation contemplates, is that do we want to extend this current arrangement in exchange for their extending the lease for till 2034 under that same breakdown? It'll stay at 8%. Cavs games, 5/8 will go to their debt, 3/8 will come to our general fund. Of non-Cavs events, 2/8 will go to their debt, and 6/8 will come to our general fund.
So in the current arrangement, if I understand correctly, the portion that goes to debt is paying off gateway bonds from the 90s, and that goes to like 2023 or something?
Yes,
2022?
June of 2023.
June of 2023.
Yeah.
So if say the agreement wasn't passed, would that 3/8 or that percentage then go also to the general fund?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I mean, then that's what we need to think through is if we do nothing, if we don't do this, then indeed there's a 2-year period where 8/8 will go to the general fund. But then we don't know what happens thereafter. So because the Cavs lease is slightly longer than the three-party agreement, so there will be a 2-year period of time where that happens. But then the question becomes, what then? Because if the arena no longer functions, then if we have like a Richfield type arrangement, then we get 0/8.
How much would you get back during those 2 years?
The Cavs paid $6.1 million to us, to the city, in 2016, and they paid 7 point something to debt. So if you look historically over the way that admission tax has gone, it ends up being about 50-50 with a little more on our end because of that, because of the non-Cavs events. So if you think about, the Cavs, of course, are the main attraction, but the Monsters games, the concerts, the NCAA when it's here, the MAC tournament, like all those other events, and there's over 200 events a year, so all those other events, we're on the 6/8 side, and it's the Cavs events that are on the 3/8, and that's just without parking taxes, that's without income taxes, that's without all of the ancillary things that are generated by this arena.
And those aren't shared with the debt service.
There is the car rental fee, I believe, but I will know that very well by the time we take a vote. But there's something to the big ones for us. So really are the admission tax, the income tax that's generated by this building. It's $2.1 million a year, and the parking taxes. And the finance director will have all that for tomorrow. What that number is to the city of Cleveland. But in terms of the question in terms of what if it's a bad projection, again, Cleveland doesn't change how we do things. There have been years, 2016 was a championship year. There have been non-championship years where the number's been closer to 2 million. So if their projections are wildly off, the Cavs are covering the overrun, the construction overrun, the county bonds. We don't cover any of the. If anybody's projections miss, our only obligation is 5/8 of Cavs events and 2/8 of non-Cavs events.
And this is just, if I go to, say, Hannah Theater, or I go to a movie up in Shaker Square, the admission tax I pay there isn't part of this, right?
No, and that's all goes to the general fund.
Do you share the view of County Executive Armin Budersch that the biggest perk for the city of Cleveland in the negotiation has been the lease extension, the 7-year lease extension?
Yes.
And do you think there's room for additional negotiations in city council deliberations? Do you think we could negotiate any other?
Perhaps, but I guess a city council like deliberation is kind of a bad place to have a contract negotiation.
Yeah.
But it's I guess the question will be kind of asked is, do we think that this is fair? Do we think that this is fair and reasonable?
Well, my question is then how does this get further negotiated? It's sort of like there were negotiations that happened, and then the job of county council and city council is merely to ratify it. There's not, there are questions that are asked, but there are no changes that seem to be, that can be made.
There is, it is possible to amend the legislation, but yeah. I would say it would be very, I guess that it's academically possible. I think what we're looking at now is to agree to extend this admission tax in exchange for their lease extension, or I think that I don't reasonably think that we're going to squeeze extra years out during the council hearings.
More negotiation, does that go back through the executive and the mayor then for them to do?
If that were to happen, yes. But I guess like I say, because I have access to more information than most people, and I've been able to, kind of dig into this. The best part of negotiation to me, in addition to the lease extension, is the fact that we're not on the hook for anything other than that. Nothing falls back to the city, and none of the money generated comes out of income tax or property tax or those things that people pay. It's basically if the Cavs have a bad year and they're not generating the money, and they only generate, say $6 million total in admission taxes, well, of that $6 million, 5/8 of Cavs events goes to their debt, and 3/8 goes to our general fund, and 2/8 goes to their debt, and 6/8. So it doesn't matter what the number is. We're like kind of locked into this percentage, And that's that's second most important to me. It's the extension of the lease and our, how we are shielded from liability.
So if 10 years from now, for example, the admission tax, Cavs have a terrible season, the admission tax has declined, bond payments come due, the taxes that are existing don't cover it, the Cavs have to make up the difference?
Or the county. Hold on, let me just, I'm better versed on what we're doing, but my
Yeah.
understanding is that the Cavs are going to pay any construction overruns, anything, and the bonds are issued by the county. Now, what if there's another arrangement that I don't know about, I don't want to speak to that, but if from my role as a president of Cleveland City Council and what's going to be in front of us, the answer to your question is, if they have that bad year, we give them 5/8 of Cavs events, and we take our 3/8 and we give them 2/8 of non-Cavs events, and we take ours. We take our 6%. And in doing that, does that create more money for the general fund than it costs us? Or because and again, the general fund is what pays for all those things we talked about earlier: police service, EMS, fire. It does our parks, our recreation. It's all in that, and it's from the general fund. And some of the other arguments that I'm happy to spend time on or talk to anybody about is all the city's money is going downtown. Well, that's just kind of not true. And people who are know how government finance works and how funds are spent know that. You know that that's not true. I mean, you look at where the money's spent. A lot of what happens downtown, for example, like shoveling their sidewalks and scraping up their gum, they pay for that themselves. They agree to tax themselves. So if you look at well over 90% of our budget goes to neighborhoods other than downtown, and this isn't just my thoughts. I mean, you look at and the capital projects as well. Look at the budget and where it goes. And while the finance director and our central collection agency, I didn't know this until I started digging for information. They have to be very, very protective of tax information, of where it comes from, because I was trying to say, who's generating money for us? What happens? And the best she could do for me is between wards 3, which is downtown, and ward 6, which is the hospitals, over 75% of our income is generated there. So basically, a lot of the money that's generated downtown plows my snow in Old Brooklyn and helps keep my parks in good working order. So, and I don't want to go too far off on that, but it's just sometimes you hear stuff and you're like, that's really not, I don't know, that's become a thing in Cleveland politics or Cleveland, the lore of Cleveland, that we're spending all this money downtown. But when we say we, if you're talking about the city's general fund or the city's capital budget, it's just not happening.
In regards to the violence at the IX Center, this
Yeah.
weekend, is there anything that the city could have done or could in the future do to be a bit more proactive in regards to potential situations like this?
Well, I think with the IX Center, you've got a situation where you know that there's going to be a lot of teenagers there, there's going to be a lot of youth there. We haven't had something like this before, but it's been too close for comfort. I think just being aware that whenever you have a lot of kids congregating, a lot of teens or young adults congregating, you've just got to be a little more vigilant. The IX Center was providing some security, but maybe we need to require additional security by the IX Center and have the Division of Police more on notice of something like the potential for something like this happening.
I wanted to touch on the reconciliation in relationship to the violence. You added $500,000.
$500,000 for youth job training.
So that takes us up to $800 for the year? Was it $300 in there already, or did I mishear that?
I would have to look at the number. I'm not positive.
Okay, but we added 500
Yeah,
more.
added 500 more.
Just a hunch, but I suspect somebody's going to stand up today and say that's not nearly enough.
Right.
Why can't you?
Okay, so if we were to just add more, like we have an agreement with YOU, with Youth Opportunities Unlimited, and they hire people, and they our youth, they'll paint our fire hydrants, or they'll do something, but we have to supervise them. So we would have to be in a position to have jobs to put people in and supervise them. Like, we can't just put money to kind of make work. I think that we can look at this in terms of how do we provide meaningful employment opportunities to youths, but it's in reconciliation and when we do things, we don't just give money to organizations. We don't just say, here's some money. You know, we go through a process where you identify the problem and you kind of come up with a plan to deal with it. So, you know, the person that might say that, we didn't dismiss the idea because he suggested something similar. It's, you know, we all share the values that youth employment is important, and that's how you can, you know, that can be the difference for many kids in terms of which path they choose. But to just give money, like to just give, you know, $2 million, which is a lot of money for a nonprofit, just to say, here's an increase in your budget of $2 million, is not the best way to get the goal that we want. You know, the goal is to have a sustainable program for getting kids employed and to make it mean something, to give kids meaningful work. So we believe that by, you know, taking a step back, looking at this as a, you know, as a better policy, like forming a better policy and forming a better plan for how we do this is a better path forward.
So with the 500,000, when it goes, say if it goes to YOU, it'll go with program attached to it then?
Yes, it is there for that purpose, but we have to make sure that, I don't want to spend this, I don't want the council to vote to spend this money and not have it be meaningful, and just have, you know, this be, if, you know, I've worked in many nonprofits, if suddenly you get a big slug of money, it's hard to spend it in a year if you don't have the infrastructure within your own organization to do that, and you don't have, it's not as simple as saying, and that's kind of the unfortunate part of this business is, you know, what sounds simple, you know, is an easy soundbite, but it's complicated. To be able to, like, come up with a meaningful program for youth employment is going to take some time, and we're going to have to really look at what our options are and how does this support our other goals? How does this support violence? How does this support, you know, just poverty in general and kids from impoverished neighborhoods? It's not as simple as, you know, just putting money. I mean, you may recall there's some council person wanted to put $125,000 into Reggie Rucker's organization. Well, it was already after second reading. We don't just give money to organizations, you know, but, you know, that doesn't mean we can't take a step back and say, okay, how do we plan for youth violence? How do we better, you know, get involved with, how do we deal with retaliatory violence? So it's not as simple as when somebody says we should give X amount of money to this nonprofit. It doesn't really work that way. You know, eventually we can get there if that organization, you know, has a contract and a plan for us, and it goes through either our maybe Department of Health or Department of Community Development Block Grant dollars. There's ways of doing it. I'm not saying it's impossible, but that's just not how budget reconciliation generally works.
So it's something that isn't precluded down the road?
No,
it's just
absolutely not.
Not in this document?
Correct. Yeah.
Excuse me. You did bring up community development block grants.
Yes.
And I wanted to ask you if you all are
Yes, it
paying
would be horrible.
attention to...
It would be the absolute, it would be terrible. No, it would, I can't state that strongly enough. The budget that is suggested by the person in the White House would be devastating to our neighborhoods. It would be, if you look at, you know, if you look at the, not so much like the big projects like the Flats East Bank, but if you look at the smaller neighborhood projects that are happening, whether it's, you know, Detroit Shoreway or Slavic Village, nothing happens without, you know, those projects rely on community development block grant dollars. The storefront renovation program, a host of social services, that would be absolutely terrible for the city of Cleveland. And I can't state that strongly enough.
Are you all doing any lobbying, or are you all trying to advocate for? Because
Yes.
the whole program was wiped out, according to...
Yes, it's zeroed out, and it's a challenge in terms of the fact that, you know, Ohio has only, you know, we have 4 members that are that represent the kind of the region. They're not of the president's party. We have 4 Democrats, advocating for this is problematic. Thankfully, I believe this is going to become a bipartisan issue where nobody likes this. But yeah, we are monitoring it. We are putting together a strategy to respond and how we're going to lobby for this one.
Very quickly, are you on record yet as to whether or not you support the Q deal, and are you willing to say right now, or do you wait till the?
There was no, that's fine, that's fine. There was a blurb that came out like over the weekend that started out as wrong, and it kind of got to kind of not false. Part of it was, okay, it said that I support the deal. Now, I would have liked to have gone forward with a complete blank slate, like just information.
Yeah.
But since you're asking me directly, based on what I know, I do support it. Not that there isn't something that can be presented. If somebody presents information that the dollars don't work, that this property doesn't really generate the money for the general fund that's being alleged, well then, I'm not married to that idea, but based on what I know so far, yes.
I'm just curious, have you gotten wind from residents in your ward about which way do you have strong feelings, or do they have strong feelings one way or the other?
Most people are just curious.
Okay.
And I would say that there are people who are philosophically believe that no public dollars whatsoever in any form should go to sports arenas.
Right.
And I respect that view, but we're probably not gonna I'm probably not gonna convince them one way or another. I mean, to me, the voters of the community have, at least not specifically on this deal, but have indicated that there's an appetite for some public support. So for me, it's a question of, is this publicly friendly? Is this publicly friendly or not, or is this, one of the worst deals out there? And that's something we look at. The people I've talked to in my ward have mainly been, so are we going to get an all-star game then?
Right.
Are we does this mean we're going to, get this? A lot of people don't know the nuances of it. So it's been, it's.
I was just curious because it seems like in some wards there's pretty strong opposition, some either just curiosity or even support, and it kind of maps pretty closely with the syntax vote, I think. I was just curious.
Yeah, and it is something that, just like I'm trying to do here today, it really is a matter of getting information to people. It's a real easy soundbite to say, we shouldn't give your money to billionaires. Well, I don't think we should do that either. I don't think we should just give money to billionaires. I don't think that's a good idea. But, to me the question is, does this property generate or cost money to the city of Cleveland? And if it generates money for the city of Cleveland, how much does it generate, and can that be used in our neighborhoods for our general fund purposes? I don't have any money to give to billionaires. I mean, most people don't. And I just think that kind of oversimplifies the argument, but it's so easy to state. It becomes, it takes on a life of its own if you don't kind of present the other, the full equation. And to me, it really is about, we had our convention center that, at one point, there was a lot of conventions, and then it just stopped being relevant at a certain point. And we had to do something different with it. I look at this as a publicly owned event center. We have a publicly owned event center with a particular lessee, the Cavs, that happen to be, and I guess I'd be curious if anybody has a different opinion about this, just in terms of how they run that building. I believe they do a very good job in terms of using that building for the purpose that it's there for. I believe they do a very good job. So we've got this publicly owned event center with a tenant that is very responsible to get bodies in there and get taxes to us. How do we move forward? Do we take an act that would continue doing what we're doing? We would feel nothing at all until June of 2023, and then thereafter we would do the same thing. Weighing things out, is it wise to take that action, or do we just kind of do nothing and see what happens? I mean, it's really not a, I'd really, look for an opportunity to kind of have a full discussion with people, especially with, my constituents, to really explain what it is that we're contemplating. We're not contemplating giving any money to Dan Gilbert. We own this thing. When I say we, you all know, I'm sure, how the county, the Gateway Development Corporation is the actual owner of the footprint, how the relationship between Progressive and the Q and what reverts to whom. I don't want to bore you with that, but it's publicly owned.
How much does, could you address what happens in that whole neighborhood has an effect on this decision-making process?
Yeah, well, in the Q neighborhood, the Gateway neighborhood, well, I think that just by my anecdotal observation, it seems tremendous. And when we went to the issue 7, the syntax thing, we heard from many people who owned establishments on 4th Street that said we never would have come here and invested here but for these facilities. The way I'm going to approach this, though, is I don't even know if I need to get there. For me, it's a matter of here's a building, here's a publicly owned arena. Okay, what is the cost to Cleveland that we're being asked to do? What is that they're being asked for, and does that generate at least that much or more for the general fund? And that's in terms of admission tax, income tax, which is what we really rely on in the city's income tax. That's our bread and butter. Parking taxes, and then if I don't have my answer, then I would go to the next level out, which is what's the economic development impact outside. And I can just share with you, because I've been through this and I've been doing this for long enough to know that everybody's got their economic development studies and what it's going to be. I have a formula for that. I just cut it in half. So let's just say, the economic impact of the RNC was estimated at $400 million. All right, I'll give you 2. And I think that's a fair way to go forward. To just basically say, okay, so what if the projections of, and at qtransformation.com, they've got an economic development study and what the impact is, and I think it's in the 200 million area. All right, so what if it's 100 million? What does that mean in terms of the businesses around there? What does that mean in income taxes and property taxes from the restaurants and from the people that work there? What does all that mean? And I will get there if after looking at admission tax and income tax and parking tax, we're still at a net negative, or it still hasn't broke even. Is there anything else I'm missing? That would be that next level out of analysis.
You say you're supportive. What about the rest of your council colleagues?
We're all having conversations right now. I think there's general support. There's going to be a good chunk of people that vote against it, I'm sure. But at this point, if people come to me asking for information, I try to give them information. I sit down and talk to them. I'll set them up meetings with anybody. However, I try to get as much information to my colleagues as possible. If the only request I'm going to ask is that if you're going to be against it for the right reasons. Don't be against it because it's it might be politically distasteful and under to a certain outside group. Do it because if you're against it, be against it because you either like I said, philosophically, you just can't get there. That any public support whatsoever is bad. Okay, I respect that, but also. If you're going to vote against it because you think it's a bad deal, tell me why it's a bad deal. Tell me how Cleveland loses by doing this. And I think that's fair. I think it's fair to say if you're going to be against it, go through, make a better case than we shouldn't be giving money to billionaires. Make a better case. And I got to tell I'm the whole issue that we need to spend more in neighborhoods. And that should be a reason to vote against it. That's all we do. every council person knows what they're doing, what's happening in their ward. I'll just rattle off for fun. In Ward 13, $8 million being spent on Pearl Road. The economic development help with the historic bank building at the corner of Pearl and Broadview. $1.5 million is going into Low Park. $375,000 is going into Goodrow Park. We're doing the Old Brooklyn Connected is going to have a serious upgrade this year, where we're going to have network grade service. Everything we do, parks, recreation, the police, it's all I take a little bit of offense at that we're giving money to billionaires but not spending in the neighborhood. I just don't think I think that's a disingenuous argument. If you really look at this book here, if you look at where money is spent and it's not a good argument. That's what we do. And as much as we spend, I'm not satisfied. I wish there were more money for certain things. Especially, this stuff we started the weekend with. Sometimes it's hard to spend a Monday morning, getting started when you know about the number of people that have been killed in the neighborhood. When you have a particularly violent weekend, it's hard, and all this stuff is hard. There's a certain person that made a statement that who knew governing could be so complicated, and it is. And there aren't easy answers, and there aren't certain sound bites that solve problems. And generally, talking doesn't solve problems. Unless you're talking to a lot of people and trying to build consensus and try to build coalitions and trying to figure out how do we solve problems. That's how stuff gets done.
Without asking you about the vote directly, do you think City Council will be an impediment to getting this thing passed?
I don't believe so, as I sit here today. And again, things can change. Maybe somebody doesn't agree with the numbers. Maybe, but just as an aside, if our finance director says that it's like break even, or that means it's a really good deal, because she estimates everything so painfully low. Like everything is like you get the worst case scenario from her on every financial thing. And if you go there go to her office for to get money for a project and just say, is there anything left in this? You gotta it's like you're squeezing nickels until they scream. So if she says it's okay, she comes with a high degree of confidence in my in my book, and I think and of most members of council. I think that they value her assessment of what it will be for the city.
Sure, Davis.
Yeah.
That way there's no surprise.
Right? Oh no, if you go to for if they're like money for stuff, you'll leave. Sometimes but you're exhausted because you have to go over every single consideration. But yeah, it's I have a high degree of confidence in her in terms of checking the numbers. That's why we're going to check the Cavs numbers versus their numbers. And at the end of the day, the numbers can't lie. It's X amount was either paid or not paid. There's no getting around that. So. Okay. Well, again, probably not tonight since we're talking now, but going forward, I'll just make a point of being here. I would just 6 o'clock. And if you want to just maybe give a call before and just let me know you're coming, but I'll just make it considered office hours. And again, no topics off out of the question, or nothing I won't talk about. And I can kind of give you a snapshot of what's coming up in the Monday meetings and what we're going to vote on. So.
I like this.
All right, good. Well, thanks for coming.